in this new world. And this is what I'm here to speak to you about. Winston Churchill exhorted us to never waste a good crisis. COVID-19 has forced us into a prolonged timeout. It has brought radical lifestyle changes. As we move into a calibrated opening up, it is time for us to begin contemplating the end of the crisis, envision what the world will look like in its aftermath, how the pandemic will change the way we live and work, and what we need to do to adjust to the new normal of the post-COVID-19 world. Today, I will present three arguments to you. First, I argue that the new normal of the post-COVID world will see major changes in our professional world. I see three vectors of professional change: the accelerated importance and use of information technology, unconventional ways of working, including freelancing and work from home, and increased inter-organizational and intersectoral cooperations, collaborations, and networks. Second, I argue that these changes will demand personal transformations from each of us, of which three are cardinal: embracing uncertainty and change, becoming a continuous learner, and practicing personal and collective social responsibility. My third and final argument is that capacity building is the single enabler and tool available to us to navigate the changes that we will confront in the professional and personal world. To leverage capacity building, we need to harness youth who are outside the formal higher education institutional network, focus on the frontline and backroom workers who are vital to decision making and implementation, and design training programs so as to train teams and not just individuals. These, in essence, are my three arguments. Why has COVID-19 thrust this imperative upon us? Does a crisis by itself ensure reform? Every great crisis to mankind has seen a period of confusion, followed quickly by rapid counter responses. In challenging times, we question accepted realities. We devise quick solutions, often outside the usual compass, some of which may be effective enough to become normal quotidian practice. This was demonstrated in the world wars as well as in pandemics such as the Spanish flu. History also suggests that the global economy is remodeled in significant ways after a major crisis like COVID-19, spurring the adoption of new technological strategies and business models. The SARS outbreak in 2003 is seen as a causal factor for the adoption of online shopping by China, which resulted in Alibaba's rise. The balance of payments crisis in India led to the paradigm shift of liberalization, globalization, and privatization. The economic and humanitarian crisis unleashed by COVID-19 is thus an opportunity to reform sectors such as skilling, healthcare, the unorganized sector, and education, which are the underpinnings of our political economy. Now let us look at the first question. What changes will we see in the post-COVID professional world? Number one, advent of technology. The CEO of IBM, speaking in an online forum, said, history would look back on this at the moment when the digital transformation of business and society suddenly accelerated. COVID-19 has increased digitalization in all spheres of our professional world, whether it is education, healthcare, governance, or entertainment. As schools closed in many parts of the world, e-learning and e-delivery of education saw a smart breakthrough. Healthcare is seeing similar changes. Digital efforts in Wuhan to contain the crisis via smartphone trackers demonstrated a powerful new public health tool. The Kerala police launched Project Eagle Eye to use drones for surveillance during the lockdown, using technology as a tool to complement manual surveillance. In the entertainment industry, Netflix and Amazon Prime saw a big boost. Netflix viewer numbers swelled as lockdowns across countries kept people at home. Even the requirements of daily activities need digital navigation today. As people have been forced physically apart, they turn to video calls on WhatsApp. All these demonstrate the growing acceptance of technology to help us feel connected. As people become more comfortable with technology and service providers upgrade their infrastructures, creating a better pipeline and more streamlined and user-friendly interfaces, technology becomes easier to live with day to day. The second change is the growth of freelancing and work from home modes. COVID-19 has propelled us to experiment with work from home on an unprecedented scale. As the CEO of Wipro put it, this will define a new normal for a lot of industries and will create new opportunities for us to be able to do work more globally. WFH has gone beyond our quotidian processes and scaled innovative new heights. Recently, my daughter was working on a deal between Facebook and Jio. It was a US dollar 5.7 billion investment by Facebook in Reliance Industries' Jio platforms. It set a new standard in remote negotiation with extensive M&A dialogue happening online, even including due diligence and agreement negotiations. This is one of the biggest deals that took place when there was a nationwide lockdown in both India and the US, the two countries where the two parties of this deal were based. Transactions of this magnitude, especially transnational ones, usually involve considerable travel and face-to-face meetings by the higher management and their financial and legal advisors. This time, however, all this happened online. The next shift that we may expect is the emergence of the gig economy. Each of us will have to get used to becoming a freelancer. Remote hiring of technical talent will become the norm. Even before COVID-19, we were seeing permanent employers such as governments and universities cutting down on hiring and increasingly outsourcing even their core functions. While this may create job insecurity, it is not necessarily a bad thing or even a new one. Take a surgeon. She is attached to one hospital, but she consults in many hospitals. Some surgeons even consult online and earns remuneration from multiple organizations. A talented and skilled individual can therefore peddle her expertise across organizations and be paid by all of them. Remote hiring of talent will become the norm, with corporate positions opening up to skilled candidates everywhere, prioritizing skills over pedigree and geography, all of which is good news for both the economy and the talent pool. It makes talent pools more diverse and businesses and economies stronger. The third change that we can see in the professional world is the growth of cooperation and collaboration. Gig economy and pervasive freelancing will bring in cooperation and coordination across sectoral silos. As freelancing becomes prevalent, teams will be self-created rather than being curated by leaders and will be more interdependent, more collaborative, more agile, and more flexible. COVID-19 has seen the pharmaceutical giants GlaxoSmithKline and Sanofi forget their commercial rivalry to join hands to build a vaccine, pooling their relative strengths of adjuvant technology and a virus antigen. While Google and Apple teamed up to evolve standards for contact tracing. My own Department of Youth Empowerment and Sports and NSS Karnataka teamed up with the Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, NIMANS, and the National Health Mission to provide curated training on COVID-19 response to NSS officers and volunteers, who in turn disseminated this to the communities. All this demands that we build up networks and skills, build each other up professionally with no room for envy or backbiting or jealousy. Now the second question. Who is the post-COVID individual? What personal transformation is required from each of us? First, embrace change and uncertainty. Heraclitus said, the only thing that is constant is change. Pragmatism demands that we survive the present moment while building ourselves to thrive in a very different future. In a topsy-turvy world, how does one stay sane and calm? Questions are everywhere. What will the future hold? How will life change? And what will the new normal be? Uncertainty is uncomfortable. Yet change is inevitable. And COVID-19 has only accelerated the pace of change and made it palpable. In such a dynamic and unpredictable situation, those who accept uncertainty and are willing to take swift, decisive, and risky action will hold the advantage. As lockdown was announced and non-essential businesses were instructed to close, business owners were suddenly faced with the tough choice of either stopping operations completely or finding new ways to provide service. Many restaurants closed their doors but kept kitchens open, tying up with delivery services like Swiggy and Zomato. Barbers whose salons closed down began to offer home haircut services. Hence, the first personal transformation that the post-COVID challenge demands from us is the realization that change is the only constant and that things may change any moment. This calls upon us to embrace uncertainty, develop equanimity, mental balance, emotional intelligence, and agility of thought and action. Second, the continuous learning mode. Become a continuous learner. Continuous learning opens our minds and changes our attitudes. Knowledge is now at our fingertips. To function effectively among this rapidly changing world of technology, we need to learn new things to remain valuable. Those not making use of this opportunity will stagnate. Do not be left behind. Ensure that you remain up to date, keep up with industry trends, and adapt your skill sets. Resources for continued learning are many. Read magazines and online articles. Analyze and critique case studies. Subscribe to publications relevant to your work or interests. Connect with global networks using Skype, social media, and email. Attend training courses and webinars. Try MOOCs such as Coursera and edX. Listen to podcasts and watch documentaries. The days when one went through a neat progression of study, work, retire will be replaced by a career of constant personal reinvention and learning with doing. Thus, the second transformation required from all of us is continuous learning. It is vital to prepare yourself well for the coming future. Third, collective social responsibility. This is our third and most important self-transformation. We are all familiar with CSR or corporate social responsibility, but this is not enough. CSR is still someone else's job. It is up to each of us to adopt personal social responsibility. We each have a duty to each other. Personal social responsibility is easier to practice, say by teaching a child or helping a destitute person in need. But what COVID-19 has brought home to us is a larger collective social responsibility. The health of our communities depends on our individual actions. Paradoxically, COVID-19, while emphasizing physical distancing, has reminded us how interconnected our world really is. The virus spread from a market in Wuhan, China, to almost every corner of the globe in just 3 months. Such a public health crisis is a demonstration of how connected we are to the rest of the world. What happens overseas or in a neighboring state can directly and immediately impact lives in our country, state, or home. Therefore, COVID-19 is an opportunity to practice collective social responsibility, helping us to overcome our prejudices, reinforce our ethics and values, extend our reach, find ways to reach out and involve, develop curiosity and compassion. My third and final question: how do we bridge the professional change and the personal transformation? Here comes the criticality of capacity building. COVID-19 has thrown up challenges and changes in our professional world. Capacity building is the tool which enables the personal transformation. As we emerge out of the pandemic, it is to be expected that governments and corporates invest in better cities, health, education, technology, and most of all, capacity building. What aspects of capacity building should we as individuals and nations focus upon? First, leadership. Every big crisis is a test of leadership. But COVID-19 is not really about political influence or corporate power. It is about the everyday leadership that we, as individuals and citizens, demonstrate in our daily lives. Therefore, our capacity building should focus as much on qualities and character traits as on specializations. Traits such as calmness and equanimity, skills such as communication and problem solving, the attributes of a strong work ethic, and a compassionate worldview. And of course, the leadership that is able to lead with persuasion and influence and not dictate. Encourages participation, not hierarchy, and is purpose-led and not power-driven. These should form part of skill development as much as technical skills. Second, the front line and back room become important. In an increasingly digitalized world, with the social media creating a virtual reality, presence and authenticity become even more important. Decision making in the pandemic is taken at the higher levels of the medical fraternity or bureaucracy. But these decisions are crucially dependent on the kind of inputs and information that flow from the bottom, from the lab technician or the ASHA worker who is in the field. Similarly, the decisions taken at apex level have to be properly disseminated to and understood by each person down the line. Without this, implementation suffers. COVID-19 is not merely a health crisis. It is a logistical marathon. Vast quantities of data, medical and non-medical, are being collated, entered, sorted, cleaned, and readied for decision makers by tribes of data entry operators and analysts. We can procure a bed at short notice, but to get a qualified nurse who understands infection control or a pulmonologist is not something that we procure in a week or two. These are long-term investments and highlight the importance of the frontline and backroom workers and to respect dignity of labor. Third, our focus should be on training teams and not individuals. We saw that the pandemic makes freelancing acceptable, as well as calling for greater collaboration across teams and organizations. It is likely that future teams will comprise permanent, temporary, freelance, and machine employees, and this diversity will call for a greater need to build cohesion within the members. Yet, our educational system does not prepare us for cross-sectoral coordination of equals. Engineers train with engineers, doctors with doctors, bureaucrats with bureaucrats. Within each fraternity, hierarchy is the fallback option to resolve differences of opinion. But what happens when a policeman has to implement a medical decision made by a doctor based on data analytics produced by a computer scientist? We get lost in translation as they struggle with their different vocabularies and work processes. To avoid these and to face future crises better, we need to train teams, not individuals. Our pedagogy should mandatorily include case studies, self-reliance in decision-making situations, problem solving, immersion experiences, and the like. In conclusion, let me say that choices, not crises, determine our opportunities. COVID-19 has changed the world like nothing before. The global lockdown that we see happening with COVID-19 is unprecedented and perhaps even incomprehensible to human minds. Yet, amidst all this, opportunities lurk. It is time for governments, businesses, and individuals to prepare for the worst, but also prepare themselves to recognize and utilize these opportunities and keep the faith that we may transform to a newer, stronger, and reinvented India. Thank you all very much. Jai Hind.